Good morning to everyone. I'm Marcia Mode-Stavros, a practitioner here at Light on the Mountains. It's good to see old and new friends here today on this gorgeous day of summer. Finally, welcome to all of you who are watching from places maybe where you've had summer all year long. We're happy to have you, and the energy is always pretty wonderful here. If you need a boost to get ready for your week, you come to Light on the Mountains. I invite you now to go into that quiet, small space where all the goodness and largeness of life is living and reminding us of who we are. I know there's an incredible life force, Father, Mother, Spirit, God, the isness, the allness, the order behind the cosmos. I know this life force to be all providing, all sustaining, and renewing. And this morning, I invite in our awareness of our oneness with the divine, that we do not walk alone, but we walk hand in hand, co-creating side by side with each person, each being on the planet, and guided and fueled by the divine. I give thanks for this morning, for this place, and for all of the people who make it happen. I give thanks with great and deep appreciation, as together we say, and so it is. Well, it's my busy season at work, so I decided to dig into my stack of writings from the past, and I came up with something I wrote in 2014, and I hope that the Reverend doesn't kill me for reading it. It goes like this. I spent a little time with Reverend John on Friday and made a point of asking him what he would be talking about today, so I knew what to write. He said he'd be covering the second part of The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Our conversation proceeded like this. Reverend John, have you read the book? I think you'd really like it. Me, I don't need another book. I don't have time to read the books I do have. Him, I have 10 copies in my car. You could have one and pay me on Sunday. Me thinking, but thankfully not speaking. Should I tell anyone that our spiritual leader is now a traveling book salesman? Selling out of his car in a Sun Valley parking lot? And besides, doesn't he know I'm trying to declutter? And doesn't he know I already have a stack of my trusty longtime go-to spiritual books that I read from every morning? But instead I say, okay, bring me the book, I'll look at it quickly. To which I swear our anointed leader said something like, wine, wine, wine. And I don't think he was referring to a glass of fine cab. So yesterday I opened the dumb book and began by quickly scanning the week's chapters. Okay, so Singer calls the noise we create in our heads our roommate. I have always referred to it as my chorus of demons or my gray junk. I don't need another name, do I? But my judgment did quiet a notch when I read that if my chorus of demons managed to manifest a body outside of myself and I had to take it everywhere I went, I wouldn't last a day. Or as he writes, if somebody were to ask you what your new friend is like, you'd say, this is one seriously disturbed person. Just look up neurosis in the dictionary and you'll get the picture. I caved a little and could almost picture this interloper book gaining a spot on my stack. This week's chapter focuses on inner energy and breaking up any blocks one might have created so one can live with an unlimited energy. Or as Singer writes, how high do you want to go? How much love do you want to feel? How much enthusiasm do you want to have for the things you do? If enjoying a full life means experiencing high energy love and enthusiasm all the time, then don't ever close. Okay, maybe this guy wasn't so bad after all. Finally, reluctantly, very, very reluctantly, I picked up my journal from that week in 2014, and I read what I had written a few days before I had read those passages. I had written, "I feed the brittle pieces so they grow into the sticky, dense, hard, gray gunk. I feed fear and lack and stress and busyness and more. I feed it so well that it grows and flourishes and squashes and suffocates and blocks the divine grace, which really is my only truth and where I want to live." Fast forward to this morning, July 2023. After I reread this piece, I skimmed my journal, and then I reviewed my thoughts, and then I came to my conclusion. What do you think it is? I should have read the book. And so it is. And then there's the affirmation, which you'll find on the printed program near the top. I align with unlimited potentiality as I embrace the truth of my spiritual identity. Let's read that together. I align with unlimited potentiality as I embrace the truth of my spiritual identity.
Yes, ma'am. I was sorry to miss you last time when you were here, but I was even better off being on vacation. So happy 4th of July weekend. Greetings to everyone at home who's watching from the comfort of their bathrobes. So many different things to talk about today. You got a few hours? We got a leftover barbecue from last week. Actually, first of all, that was a great event. It poured rain, and I don't mean like a little bit. I mean literally how, you know that thing where they say it's raining buckets? It was raining literal buckets. It's almost like people were out there like, phew. But it was great. And thank you, Paul. The band was great. And I don't know, everyone had a great time. It really was wonderful. So thank you for everyone who volunteered, who came and partake. It's just a great way to launch the summer. Let's talk a little bit about the 4th of July, why we celebrate and what we celebrate. Well, first of all, I can't leave Marcia without my response. Marcia and I have had so many escapades over the year, Light of the Mountains, at Writers' Conference, personal friends. We could just go on story after story, and sometimes she's pissed at me, sometimes she's pissed at her, and sometimes we're pissed at somebody else, or who knows. I mean, we're just all sorts of things. But of course, that story reminds me, I think sometimes it would have been so much easier to become a Catholic priest because your parishioners actually do what you tell them to do. I always get resistance. So anyways, I think it's all turned out for the best. So on one hand, with 4th of July, I think we have, as a country, a long list of things to be grateful for, to be proud of. And we have things that are still works under construction. And some people would say that you really shouldn't talk about the negative stuff so much, that just talk about the good stuff. And I don't believe in that. I believe actually as a country we have a more compelling story when we look at the whole thing, the good, bad, and the ugly. And especially when we look at the inception of our country, at least I remember how it was taught to me in grade school, it really was a really cleaned up version. And I think the true version, again, has so much more depth. So the inception of our country, the way that I look at it, was much how we look at when we set an affirmation for a dramatic change in our lives. We look at it as first planting a seed of something new to grow. And when we go back to the 18th century, that's really what this was. As some of you will remember from grade school, it was called the American Experiment, because we were based on freedom and a representative government. Now, the truth of the matter is, a very small, select few were able to have that privilege in our beginning country. If you were white and male and owned land, you could vote and have a say in all that was going on. And if you were anyone else, You didn't. And of course, we grew our country in the beginning on the back of enslaved people. And if you really want to get an idea of what that was like, have you gone to Mount Vernon? It's an amazing little side trip if you've gone to Washington, D.C. Mac and I did this a few years ago. And it really shows you it almost seems like the oil and water of trying to mix it together. Someone that was so determined about liberty, personal liberty, and whose estate was run by an enslaved group of people. So it shows you where we started. And I think I think it's a much more compelling story to say that look where we started with the seed idea that honestly looked like it didn't even have a prayer to be planted and to grow. I mean, really, when you look at that level of non-freedom, to think that we could have this slow arc towards greater freedom, it's almost like who would ever thought that could happen? But it did, so it's a compelling story. And it does remind me of Martin Luther King's statement, and I'm paraphrasing, saying that the arc of the moral universe is long, but yet it bends towards justice. And I know sometimes, like for me recently, it seems like we've gone backwards. And it's very discouraging. But guess what? We've gone backwards a lot of times. That arc has not gone constantly. It's gone like this, and sometimes it seemed like it was going back to the beginning and the inception. So the way that I look at this, even in terms of just thinking of our lives in spiritual terms, that the idea of freedom and self-determination, I look at them as spiritual principles that we can always embody and go back to. Just like when we look at prayer in our own personal lives, I don't recommend always, praying for things, like praying for a certain vote to turn a certain way. That you, in a sense, you affirm that spiritual principle of freedom and the highest good for all is true in anything. And leave the results to however this works in the universe. That I'm always focused on the highest good for all things, and knowing that me as a human can't always be the best person to determine what that looks like. Yes, we participate along the way, but you always have to get back to the spiritual principle of it. Our current time in history is a lesson in that. Keep returning to the spiritual principle of freedom and for the highest good for all, and know that we may be making some side trips here, but I believe it's always going towards the place of good for everyone. So yeah, if you feel discouraged right now, this holiday is the perfect time to remind ourselves what those principles are. Especially, again, looking at the inception of our country and saying, boy, this didn't have a prayer of a chance to really work out, did it? I mean, really. I mean, it's mind-boggling that it did, and that it worked out so well considering from where we started from. So when we're stuck in moments of history, it can be so discouraging. But look at the longer journey that we're on. And we're here to take care of the few years that we're here of this journey. And so we keep moving on. And know that the truth will always prevail, whether we are here to witness it in our physical bodies, in our lives, or not. So that's my rant on 4th of July. But it fits perfectly into, is it over here? So, into our theme for this month, as well as the topic for this month. So the theme for this month is created by Center Spiritual Living. Sometimes I use their theme, sometimes I don't. Speaking truth to circumstances, which is kind of a play on words of the phrase, speaking truth to power. Have we all heard that before, many of us? Do we really even know what that means? Because I realized, boy, that is such a great thing. And as I was reading this and thinking, do I really know what the intention of that original saying is, speak truth to power? I think we all kind of do, and maybe some of you know more than I do. In fact, a lot of you know more than I do. But I had it explained to me this week in a way that just really hit home. And I personally understand it now in a way that I never understood it before. So the whole point of this saying, speaking truth, let's look at the original, speaking truth to power. What does it mean by power? So in our world, in our families, in our communities, in our group of friends, you could say that there is a power structure that we have all created, isn't there? There is a hierarchy of power we've created for our government and in our country. There's a power we've created in our communities. And in other words, that which seems to be in charge. Think of it that way. And sometimes that which seems to be in charge is not necessarily in integrity, or really not existing for the greater good for all. So this whole idea says speaking truth to power, meaning I am speaking the spiritual truth to this power structure that exists that shouldn't exist, let's say. That it's not possibly integrity. So speaking truth to it is saying that, okay, you're not as much at integrity as you could be. So it's like saying the paper tigers of our world is saying, you really don't have power here. There is a greater truth here that we are going to embody. So does that kind of make sense? So it's taking what we have created that may not be in everyone's best interest and admitting this is not in everybody's self-interest. And something can change as we embody and speak the greater truth of things. I'm saying the spiritual truth, not my opinions of things. So it's very similar in here. Speaking truth to circumstances is very, very similar. And especially when we have a conversation within this spiritual path of new thought that talks about circumstances and conditions in the physical world as always being changeable and non-permanent. And just think about that. Spiritual truth is always truth. We may look at the truth different, we may define it differently, but like the way gravity works, it always works the way that it works. We may have a different interpretation of it, but it's a scientific truth. So circumstances always change. 2 weeks ago, we were complaining about how cold it was. Now we're complaining about having to turn on air conditioners if you have one. Isn't that funny? It's like, oh, it's so hot, I wish it would cool down. And 2 weeks ago, it was like, is summer ever going to come? But that's how conditions and circumstances are. They are always changing. And when you are in the middle of a circumstance, our humanness leads us to believe that they won't change. That anything you see and exist in the world today, it's almost our human, drama that, oh, it will never change. Oh, this is so terrible. What's going to happen? But you know what? It changes. Look in your life in the rearview mirror to any point in your life that you thought that you were in a true state of emergency. I mean, not pretend. I was like, things were really rough. Things were like, I don't know how I'm going to make it. And guess what you did? Because circumstances slowly change. They change through our conscious efforts, and they change through really our unconscious beliefs. So part of this change is to work on them all. What is my conscious effort? What do I really believe about this circumstance? And do I believe that impermanent circumstances can change? Because part of our false beliefs is that we believe that they won't change. But they always do. They always do. So speaking truth to circumstances is living in that truth that circumstances always change. That some things that I am seeking healing and transformation for may be on a longer arc of resolution, but they are on an arc of resolution. And our job in our own inner work is to not forget that. Because when you're in the middle of it, it seems like it's never going to end. But it does. It always transforms. And part of the trick here is not to give what appears to be that discord our power and our fear. Because that makes things go a little bit more slowly. So I had a lot of fun with my blog this week. I don't know who read it. It's called Monsters Under the Bed. We all have, did many of us have monsters under the bed when we were kids? And now, as I pointed out, not because I'm particularly brave, I didn't have any of those because I had an older brother. And I knew his job was to slay the dragon should they come. So I could go sleep perfectly soundly because, we had these kind of like beds that went this way. And since he was 3 years older, it was always his job to slay the dragons. So no nightlight needed because he was there. I can imagine I would have done the same sort of thing if He had not been there. But there was one famous incident when I was about 4, which I guess you could say it was almost a monsters under the bed moment. So when I was 4, I was still prone, about a third of the nights to sneak into my parents' bedroom and crawl in with them. Because they had this big, comfy king bed that just seemed expansive, and they always had little Hershey Kisses up on the headboard. So I don't know if I was there for them or the candy, because they'd always like, go back to sleep, here's a piece of candy. So, what can I say? It's all about the candy, especially when you're 4. But so, the way that our house was configured is that the bedrooms were all at one side of the house, and there was a hallway, and the doors to their room, my room, and my sister's room were very close, within a few feet. And even though when I would do my little sneak in to go get chocolate and sleep with my parents, I wouldn't turn the light on, but there was enough light through my bedroom window, like from street lights and things, that you could, not bump into walls. So this one time, like I said, I was about 4, like sneaking in, and my eyes are playing tricks on me. You know how that so it wasn't light, but there was just kind of a gray kind of thing that you could see the carpet, but not really. And to me, it looked like it was moving. And so my 4-year-old mind suddenly decided that there were thousands of moving worms on the carpet. And the 4-year-old of myself started to jump up and down so they wouldn't get on me and just yell, "Worms, worms, worms!" And of course, the whole household. Suddenly, my parents are at their door. My brother's like, "What the?" At his door. My sisters, of course, my younger sister was like one in a crib crying. And my older sister, who was about 14 at the time, everyone's like, "What's going on here?" And of course, you turn on the light and the worms are gone. Well, they finally convinced me that there were no worms or monsters under my bed. Interesting thing, though. So I really didn't have any other worm incidents. But it's funny how we make things up and we give power to our fears. So here again, I'm next week, 4-year-old in bed. Okay, so they tell me it's not worms. Do I dare chance sneaking into my parents' bedroom? They've got chocolate. And I never had a worm incident, but I just remember kind of like, there's chocolate in the other room kind of thing. But this is how our minds work. That there's a part of us that knows that something is not true, but yet we have at some point put so much fear and anxiety in it that somehow it still feels like it should be true. Or it is true on some level. And I believe that's at the core of our growth as spiritual beings, that we intellectually know certain spiritual principles, but as we are experiencing life, we think, well, is that really so? This thing looks really bad. It really does look like a monster under the bed that just can't be defeated. So we all do that in a sense. So I guess we could say that our struggle in life is to really shine the light of truth on these supposed monsters or things that we have created. Now, it's not to say that there aren't real challenges in the world. There are. You can't do what I call, or has been called, just spiritually bypassing something. Do you really know what that is? So, on one hand, as we look at the New Thought philosophy, we say that on the level of spirit, everything is perfect, whole, and complete at all times. Healing is not something that has to happen. It's something that you reveal within yourself, because there's a part of us that is not flawed and has never been flawed. So spiritual bypassing is intellectually understanding or parroting that without realizing that in the physical world, there's also a physical follow-up that you often have to do. That will say, well, this terrible thing that happened is perfect, whole, and complete, and I'm handing it over to God, so I'm going to go watch TV now and just let someone, something, somehow take care of it. And it doesn't really work that way. On one hand, handing it over really means that I am handing over my opinion of how it should turn out. I am handing over my attachment to how it needs to turn out. But that doesn't mean that I don't have to be involved in its evolution into my life, if that makes sense. So you can say, these are the monsters that I have, I need to work at, and usually the answer to my prayers of resolution or guidance is a to-do list of things that I actually have to do. And that's where often our resistance can be. I know that answered prayer is real when I intuitively get an answer of what I need to do and I don't want to do it. You ever get that? It's almost that sicky feeling, I call it, of answered prayer. It's like, that's really not what I had in mind. That would really mean that I have to call so-and-so and so-and-so and possibly ask for forgiveness or say I'm sorry or, any number of things that would just be too uncomfortable. It's like, can't just the light of spirit just shine on them and they know it's all well? Can't I just not have to do anything? No, actually, that's not the answer. You have to do something. And again, people ask me, well, how do I know if it's answered prayer? Again, if it makes you uncomfortable, it's probably the real thing. If it's letting you off the hook, you made it up. So look at that. So that's, I think, a lot of times that the discomfort of the answers start to come intuitively, and we're just not liking the answers that come. And you think, well, those monsters under the bed aren't so bad. Maybe we'll just leave them for a while because it's too uncomfortable to call the person, do this, have a discussion with an employer or whatever. It's too uncomfortable. So yes, the process of answered prayer can be uncomfortable, but yet we need to do it. And it's funny how we get into situations, again, I'm on this monsters under the bed theme, that we can be so involved in something that we can think that it's beyond healing. It could be a job you've had now or have had in the past, that you're in this drama or a thing happening in your family, or again, things happening in the world. So I had a lot of fun this week in my blog talking about an animated movie, Monsters and Company. Anyone see that or remember a little bit of that? It's some, of course, anyone with little kids. I should have you come and give a synopsis. So here's what I loved about this. I love kind of this weird kind of stuff. So there is a parallel universe of people that look like monsters. They're actually like everyone else. They go to jobs, they go to restaurants, they read the newspaper. But in the world like here, we need to have energy. Like we are dependent on fossil fuels, and we're working to go towards renewables. And so that's one of our big dilemmas and dramas, isn't it? How do we get our energy? How do we, when we plug something into the wall, to make sure that that thing is going to work? And so the way that this alternate universe of people that look like monsters figured out is that scared children put off energy. And they figured out a way, I know, does this sound sick? It's like, oh, I wouldn't let my kids watch that. Veronica can tell you that it's pretty good. So like, well, how do we scare children in this alternate universe? So there's these secret doors that the monsters get to open and go scare children, and I don't know how they, it's been a long time since I've seen the movie. So they collect the fear, and like, whew, I just filled my gas tank on the car because I got, 2 kids to be afraid tonight. So I've got, I can drive my car for another thing, and the doors was one way. It's a very long sort of plot that I don't need to go into. But they discover something interesting before the resolution of the movie. Well, before that, so they think, well, if just scaring children would be great, and this is going to be another reason why you would never want to have your kids watch it. What if we kidnapped the children and imprisoned them and scared them 24 hours a day? That'd be like a nuclear energy explosion. And so the whole drama, like, oh, they're going to kidnap the kids. But then they come up with the idea, or this realization, again, you're caught in a system of, I don't know how we get out of this. I wasn't really good with scaring the kids, but the new car I have takes twice as much gas. Well, maybe we should imprison the kids and scare. You know how that works with us? We kind of make excuses like, well, is it really that bad? If I just dump this trash here, it's like I don't know what to do with it. So we talk ourselves into these monsters under the bed. But the clincher towards the end is that they discovered that the energy emitted by children who are in joy is 10 times that of children who are in fear. So they said, so if we make it our mission to make children as joyful as possible, they win and we win. And that's kind of like the resolution of it. So somewhere in our own, like, gee, things can't change, there is a realization that there is a good that works for everyone. We get stuck in this idea that for me to win, someone else has to lose. And that relates to our politics even. It's like, yes, we have to have this, and we have to have these people losing. We have to show them, don't we? But what the movie teaches us is that if you get over yourself a little bit, there might be a way that actually works for everyone. And it's difficult sometimes to, but wait a second, they're so wrong, and oh, they're terrible, and this, and they want to do this to me, and well, maybe they do. But when you go to the larger idea that works for everyone, there eventually is this realization like, really? We don't have to fight about this anymore? This actually kind of works out for everybody here? And it's like, so give it some thought in your life, in your families. And it's really not a spiritual bypassing. There is hard work along the way. So much drama happened in that movie before they got to that realization. I mean, you thought, oh, it's really going to get worse now. And it doesn't really have to. So if anything, as we're enjoying this longer weekend, and you go to the parade, and you have your annual hot dog and stomach ache like I do, like, this is really good. Maybe I should have two, because I'll really have a stomach ache this year. Yes, we're going to do that. And add chips, because that really will upset my tummy too. So we're really going to do that. But as you do this year, to think, well, what is it really about? And be honest, boy, we've come through some really nasty stuff as a country. We still have more to go. But first, do give ourselves credit from where we came, and knowing how impossible those during that period of time thought it would be. Use that as proof that amazing things are possible. Things that you never thought were possible can be inevitable. So reflect on that this weekend. Don't be like, oh my God, our country is doing this. Just look where you have come from. Look for the spiritual principles that we embody as a country, and know that those will win the day if we, in a sense, speak truth to the circumstance and allow it to be. So let's go within here for a second and give thanks for this incredible existence that we have here in our country in the Wood River Valley. We don't run away from the conflicts. In a sense, we embrace them, because within there is great healing. We know that there is great truth, and we know that there are resolutions and solutions that serve everyone. And we right now in this holiday weekend hold that vision of all being served in equality, all being seen for who they are, all being seen for who they are with this kaleidoscope of differences that we have in this amazing world. It is actually all perfectly and fits wonderfully together. And we celebrate that. And we know that as good as things are in this moment, the challenges that we face, we see healing right here and right now, and elevate our consciousness even more as a country. So we give thanks for this. And as we give thanks for this, we will release it and let it go, meaning we release attachment to how the outcome is supposed to look. We release our opinions, and we allow the highest good for all to evolve and be here right now. And so it is.